Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us again today. We have been speaking with Wolter Van Verschuer. He is a minister and teacher for A Course in Miracles, and he's the president of A Course in Miracles International.com. We'll have that website at the end of the presentation. In our first segment, we talked to Wolter about his background and how he was introduced and started working with A Course in Miracles. And we also talked about the author or the scribe or the conduit for A Course in Miracles, Helen Schucman. In this segment, I'm really excited to talk to you, Wolter. I'd really like for you to tell our listeners a little bit on how we can interpret A Course in Miracles and what are the best first steps if someone out there is not familiar or would like to get introduced to A Course in Miracles. What's that first step that they can do besides picking up the book? I've got the books right here. These are my copies.
Those are the ones, the original issues. But nowadays, I mean, the one that I'm carrying here is a much different version. It's just one version. It's a bit dog-eared, but there are various versions around. Mm-hmm. You can look online, and you can get copies in your own language. A Course in Miracles, to a large extent, now is in the public domain. Okay. That's a whole different story. There's a lot of material available. But if you get the book, A Course in Miracles, whether you find the original that Kristen has, the three parts, or just one thing, what I would... it's difficult to recommend a particular thing because it's very individual how people approach this material. You use the word interpretation. I would say don't interpret. Just let whatever you read say what it says. Mm-hmm. It says somewhere that it's either this course is either completely accepted or not at all, or there's no really, it is all true or none of it is true. And so this is so it's not about your interpretation. Your interpretation is probably going to be what the problem is. You don't want to interpret, you want to experience, you want to practice. Jesus says in the workbook, in the introduction to the workbook, it said, whatever you do with this, you don't have to believe it, you don't have to accept it, you don't even have to like it, and you probably won't. Most of the ideas, because they're very, most of the ideas are completely opposite to what you now believe. But only if you just utilize the ideas, and I could point you to where it is. It's in the introduction of to the workbook. Just practice them. Just apply the ideas, and that's actually the only thing that you're asked to do. So, and then the question is, okay, where do you start? Okay, I told my own story when I received the book. I recognized, okay, there's a workbook. There's something I can do. And it was the first time, actually, just going back to my own story, that my wife and I were, my wife Nora and I were talking about this very often, is when we discovered the book, that we finally discovered something that we could do ourselves. We had been reading so much spiritual books and everything about stuff, and it was all about lofty ideas and pies in the sky and energies and all that stuff. But here was something that you could actually do. You could actually practice your own. You didn't even have to go to an ashram to sit with the guru. You could just pick this up in the morning, practice the lesson of the day, and take it to your office, wherever you were going. And this is how it was for us, and this is how it still is for me. Every day, I wake up with the book and I go to bed with the book. It's really with the lesson of the day. It's actually so. So I would say the workbook is a very good place to start, because it begins to open your mind immediately for the theoretical context that the text provides. for others, it's very different. They will say, well, no, I'd like to start reading the text, and I'll come to the workbook later on. Others go to the teacher's manual, which is in itself an incredible document, because it's written in a little bit more easy going way. You called it dense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It actually, it's not dense. It's very light. It's completely light, but because you are so dense, you think it's dense, and this is why A Course in Miracles is really the material will open up to you, and you will experience yourself as light, because you are what light is. And but it is very common for a lot of new students who come to this to initially, when they open it up, and this is my experience too, you open it up, you read a sentence or a paragraph, or you try to read the whole book, as people try to do, like, okay, I'm beginning to read on page 1, and then that's the worst thing I think you can do, is to just try to read it as a book. But there are people who do it, and with great success for themselves. I mean, and I think that's fine. There's no prescribed method for doing this. But my experience, I mean, sometimes there is one paragraph that actually leaves you completely dumbfounded, and you just stay there for a week, as far as I'm concerned, and think about it and integrate it and contemplate it and meditate on it and whatever. You know, it's very different. I now personally, I'm doing a class in Dutch, actually, on YouTube, and I'm just reading a section every week, and I just add my own experiences to it and everything. And that's a practice. It's for whoever wants to do that. That's fine.
So there's no wrong or right way to
absolutely not
read this. For me, I started with the volume 1 because I thought I didn't know where else to start.
Yeah.
And I started reading it, and it took me a few pages to get into the messages and kind of know who the narrative voice was. And then something really unique happened to me, Wolter. I almost started channeling the words, and I started reading it. Normally when I read, I am a silent reader. This propelled me to read out loud. And I noticed that I was reading extremely fast, which I was thinking, am I going to, digest these words? But it was something that was very celestial, I think, that happened to me when I started reading it. So I know everybody has a different experience when going through the course.
What I'm always very much aware of, and this is that A Course in Miracles is actually a mind. It's really a mind training program. It's really a mind training program where you begin to train your mind to as this into what it really is, to begin to discover what you really are and what everything around you actually is. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, it is not really like, okay, now we're on this spiritual path. It is really the denial of a spiritual path. It is really the end of a spiritual path, because it provides the answer to what you are, and it provides you the escape mechanism of your own, and this may be very threatening as I say this, because I'm lifting it up to where it really is in a particular way. Like, okay, I'm going to lose myself. I already know who I am. Don't come and tell me that this is not what I am. And yet, this is what A Course in Miracles. This is what A Course in Miracles is presenting you with the. And this is why people who come to the Course in Miracles somewhere have maybe asked the question, hey, there must be a better way. There must be another way than the way I am doing things right now, or the world that I see the world that I see around me, is that actually, am I really happy with the way I look at everything? And
I think for a lot of us in Christian society who grew up, with the dogma of the Bible and, kind of having that ingrained to us that is the only way. I think that, well, if I was learning about this for the first time, letting people know that there is another way, and letting people know that the message that has been given to us, this amazing, wonderful message, is that maybe, and obviously I'm not a master of A Course in Miracles, but from what I've gathered, the information in here is giving us the tools in order to step away from this conditioning over the last couple thousand years of, this is how it has to be, and this is where your mind needs to be. And just because, people have been doing it for the last, dozen decades and longer, doesn't necessarily mean that that's how we need to be thinking today. And I think that A Course in Miracles is a very liberating text. I think it's a message from somebody that we all know, put in a different context. And so even though maybe this doesn't make sense to a lot of people, if you get into the text, or if you can open your mind and go there and know that other things are possible, I think that's a great awakening.
Absolutely. Well, what I could do is I could take you, I could read quickly through the introduction to A Course in Miracles.
Sure.
It says this is a required course. I mean, the idea that it's required is amazing. Mm-hmm. You could say, well, it doesn't mean what it says. No, it means exactly what it says. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. So every time you come to it, it's up to you to take what you want to take. But only at that time. There is, in that sense, no future or past. The future and the past are actually taken away from you in a particular way. The Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. Why? Because it's really what you are. It is really something that cannot be taught. But you don't know what love is, so this is why it has to be phrased in this way. You begin to experience what love really is. The idea that the condition that a human is in is not one of is actually the antithesis of love. Okay, and what it really means. Okay, so the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is what is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing, and this is very important, and this is why it is a practice, the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. It's the certainty that love is present all around, regardless of whether you are aware of it or not. And particularly, it is offering you could say, and I'm not talking to you, Kristen, I'm talking to your listener, to everyone who wants to hear it.
All of us, yeah.
That it actually it removes the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. So it assumes that you're actually not aware of love's presence, but that this Course will help you to remove the blocks to that awareness. And then it says here, the opposite of love is, and the love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. So you're naturally entitled to be aware of the presence of love all around you. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. And this is the key element in the whole Course in Miracles, is that the idea that fear that we all experience at some point is actually not the truth of what is not, there is no truth in it. And you can say, well, yeah, but I experienced the fear. Absolutely, you do. But it doesn't make it true. Because the opposite of love is fear, and what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. That's a really reasonable statement, that if love is all-encompassing, it cannot have an opposite. You could say, yeah, but the opposite of love is fear. Yeah, but fear it is an experience that you have, but it's not necessarily the truth. And this is what you have to begin to discern in a way. And then it says, okay, then it says, okay, this course can be summed up very simply in this way: nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And this is actually, this introduction sums it up beautifully, because it is really like that nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. So in a nutshell, it actually says that every time that you feel threatened, or that actually you that you feel that you're actually nothing. That's what it actually says. And that there is another way to see yourself, in which it's not like, oh, I'm something feeling threatened. It takes away the whole possibility that threat is possible, and that God is a fact and nothing else, and that God is the truth and nothing else is true. And this is something that we all know on a very deep level,
very molecular level. Absolutely.
On a very molecular level. And the easiest way to express it would be, and the course does this in innumerable ways, in all sorts of ways, so that it can reach all those belief systems, that you actually that those belief systems begin to dissolve into and you begin to recognize that what you thought was true was actually not true.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole practice is about, actually.
Right. That's a beautiful way to summarize it. And that introduction is very profound. And I think just by re-listening, I haven't read the introduction in a long time. It reminds me of how important this book is and what these teachings really mean. So, Wolter, I wanted to thank you so much for your time with us today. Before we leave, though, Wolter is actually going to read a lesson from the workbook. It is lesson number 264. I'm surrounded by the love of God. So, Wolter, thank you, and thank you for leading us out with this wonderful message.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you for having me here. And for everyone here, this is lesson 265. I'm surrounded by the love of God. Father, you stand before me and behind, beside me, in the place I see myself, and everywhere I go. You are in all the things I look upon, the sounds I hear, and every hand that reaches for my own. In you, time disappears, and place becomes a meaningless belief. For what surrounds your Son and keeps him safe is love itself. There is no source but this, and nothing is that does not share its holiness, that stands beyond your one creation, or without the love which holds all things within itself. Father, your Son is like yourself. We come to you in your own name today to be at peace within your everlasting love. My brothers, join with me in this today. This is salvation's prayer. Must we not join in what will save the world along with us?
Lovely.
Amen.
Thank you, Wolter. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Kristen.